Welcome to Super Talk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride.
Welcome to Super Talk, the weekly podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode 129. I'm your host, Brian Professor Pettis, and with me, as always, my illustrious co-host, Titanium Tony Estrella.
Sir, how are you, Professor
Well, you
Pettis?
look just so energized and
I'm
excited.
fired up. I'm so excited. We just literally walked out of the Marvels movie. We decided, we made an executive decision and decided to see it in IMAX, hoping that IMAX will add some level.
We wanted to give this movie every opportunity to wow us.
We spent the extra money to be in IMAX, and all 10 people that were in the theater, I guess, did the same thing. So excited. We're going to review the Marvels, and the professor.
You're going to get our, just out of the theater first impressions of just watching this movie. So It's not like we had time to talk about it.
None.
We've been formulating our ideas. We're going to give you off the cuff review here,
and then we're going to do Loki's season finale review, the end of Loki. So we're going to go through that, and what we're going to give each other our thoughts on that, and bounce some ideas off. I have some questions. And I know the professor has the answers, so awesome.
Yeah, right.
Let's get rolling.
All right, well, let's get started by thanking the listeners that bring the show to you, our patrons. Patreon.com/supertalk. If you want to become a member of the patronship, you really help out the show when you do. So if you'd like to donate $1 every time we come up with one of these silly episodes, just join the patronship. Patreon.com/supertalk. It's how you become a member. Really appreciate our patrons out there. All right, let's jump into, I'll say, some really good news. And this is our review of the finale of Loki Season 2. The finale episode was dropped Thursday night at 9 o'clock. Again, and I've talked about this before, I love the fact that they're now dropping them the evening before the actual release date.
Yeah.
I'll say we on the East Coast, we're on the East Coast, there were people that were on the West Coast that would stay up until midnight East Coast time and watch the episode. So they could, they would say, oh, it's dropping at midnight East Coast time, so we'll just watch it at 9 o'clock, And those of us on the East Coast were like, well, I guess we'll watch it tomorrow. But I'm glad they shifted it back into now being 9 p.m. Eastern time, dropping those episodes. And so I actually got to watch it pretty early on. We both felt last week in reviewing episode 5 that it seemed a little bit like a filler episode, right? Yeah. Really kind of giving us some of the backstory behind the original kind of team of the
where
TVA
the variants
team.
were taking from.
Got some history of the variants and really
still really good, but kind of a filler episode,
right? But I think it was very much more designed to get us to understand how Loki could master his time slipping. And I found it very strange, though, that he stopped time slipping for several episodes. Episodes 2, 3, and 4, he didn't time slip anymore. Then all of a sudden, at the end of episode 4, he time slipped, to kind of save himself. But that episode was really designed around kind of letting us know, hey, he's finally mastered. He understands what he needs to do to time slip.
Right.
And boy, did they go all in on that concept in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I'm going to say, from the minute it started all the way through the end, it held my attention. It was well thought out from a writing perspective, from a pacing perspective, from just what was in each of the different scenes that we had in the episode. They really put some good thought into how they were going to structure this finale.
I'm getting some big, likable vibes here.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I thought it was,
So you like Loki season 2?
Yeah, Loki season 2 was really good. I think, we both really loved Loki season 1.
Yeah.
And I think we previously said that it's the best thing that Disney Plus has ever come out with. And
I think I had it at number 2, but yes.
Yeah, I think you had it right behind WandaVision or whatever. Just because WandaVision was it was the first one. There's some nostalgia about that and everything else. But I think universally, Loki season 1 was the most liked show that Disney Plus has ever, like highest reviewed show Disney Plus has ever released. I think season 2 was right on par with it. It just so different in so many different ways, but I loved it. I thought it was great.
It's one of my favorite Disney Plus shows. I absolutely loved it. I thought they knocked it out of the park. I thought in terms of finales, probably one of the best, if not the best finale of any Disney Plus show.
Oh, without question.
Without question. Even... And I say one of the best because that season, the finale of WandaVision with her kind of releasing everybody, and you kind of see
Vision against the White Vision, and her fighting Agatha.
That was pretty good. But I'm telling you right now, I put this up against it. So one of probably the best season finales. And definitely the series itself was banger.
It was just done so well. I mean...
Well, Brian, we've said this before, Professor. Writing. I mean, the writing is everything.
Have a good showrunner. Have a writer who's a showrunner who knows how to pace the show and, make sure that each episode has a self-contained story that leads into the next episode. I mean, it was just so well done. I mean, this episode... I thought, I've alluded to this over the past few review episodes we've done, and we've been discussing this series, that it seemed like to me that they were setting up the fact that we're in this massive time loop within this season. And we got real good confirmation of that ultimately it was a time loop that Loki was manufacturing to help save the TVA. And he actually created his own Groundhog Day scenario. I mean, it was just so well done. Where he's like, we got to figure out why we're not able to put this device in the loom. Why is it not working? Why is he turning to spaghetti every time he goes out there? And he keeps asking, Obi, what did we do wrong? How do we do it better? How do we do it better next time? He goes, what do you mean next time? And then boom, they're doing it again, right? And it was just so great. Where every time he ran into an obstacle, he would time slip back into a point where he could fix that obstacle, right? It was like, we're not doing it early enough. And he would go back earlier and say, we got to rush everybody, get down the gangplank faster.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not working. And then go back earlier. Okay, we got to hurry. And eventually, I just thought this was great. Eventually, Victor Tommy does make it down there successfully because they went out early enough, and he does launch it, and they get it in the loom, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's working! They're it's expanding the loom, it's able to." And then all of a sudden, the number of, and Victor Tommy actually said this. He said the number of branch timelines is they're duplicating exponentially.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do to create something that will handle an exponential, explosion of timelines.
Right.
And Loki's like, oh crap. And then he goes back earlier and he says, Obi, we need to come up with a different idea. This one's not working. Tell me everything you know about quantum physics. How long would that take?
Decades. Centuries.
Decades. And then Victor Tommy says, like a century. He goes, sounds good. Boom. And then it's like, then you kind of see the quick, he goes back, spends us, and then you see a tagline in the show, a century later. They see him doing it again. But eventually they find out that concept didn't work. And he's like, okay, well, maybe the only way this TVA doesn't get destroyed is if he who remains never died. Then so he goes back to the moment where he and Sylvie were fighting to prevent her from killing he who remains.
So he's time slipped for a century, and he's time slipped so many times at the moment where he thinks they made the mistake so that this didn't work. And then once he got it perfect and it worked, they found out that it didn't work. It was never going to work. There has to be another. And so he starts exploring other different avenues by time slipping in different areas to find out what else he could do to stop this. I thought it was absolutely
I think the concept of
still confusing.
He who remains not being killed probably would have saved the TVA. However,
he had
to kill Sylvie.
and it would have only secured the sacred timeline.
The sacred timeline,
right? And all the branches.
But then he also he who remains, like at one point in time, that's what I thought was so brilliant. At some point in time, he who remains, who had been killed several times over, we watched. He kept trying to fight off Sylvie, and she always beat him. And then eventually Victor, he who remains, stops time, and he says, "What?" Loki said, "What took you so long? Why didn't you do that before?" He goes, "How many times have you been doing this?" Yeah. Like, he knows what Loki's doing.
Right.
He knows he's time slipping. He knows, how many times have you been at this?
Right.
He goes, "You don't think I could have stopped this?" He said, "But And then they have that whole conversation up to the point where he says the loom was only a safety measure to protect the sacred timeline.
It was a fail-safe. Yeah. It was meant to fail once the branches became too many.
Once the sacred timeline was not the only timeline anymore, it was meant to basically, it was only there to protect the sacred timeline.
Right.
Which I thought was brilliant. And he basically said, there's really no way for you to, you either get the sacred timeline that I created, keep me alive, and we'll maintain that, save me eventually, and we'll maintain the sacred timeline, or you're going to have the TVA destroyed. There's no in between.
Right.
There's no way to save all these branches.
And those branches will flourish along with his variants, which we know, and he said several times, will create a brutal multiverse war that destroys almost everything.
I just thought it was so well done, and eventually he comes to the realization, and he goes back even further. He goes back into season 1. Yeah. Of when he was, interviewing, Mobius was interviewing him, and he's like, "I need your help, Mobius. I got to figure out what I'm doing. What am I doing wrong? Like, what's there?" And he keeps going back earlier and earlier to figure out, can he come up with an idea at some point in time, and at some point in time, he does realize, I know what I need to do.
I heard that episode 5, they had to rewrite episode 5 because there was a lot of time slipping that he did. That required he time slipped back into other.
That's a possibility.
Scenes. Yeah, it's a possibility.
That's a theory.
That's a rumor that they're saying that he did. Time slipped back with some bigger actors and which I don't.
It's
think
a theory that Eric Voss had on the New Rockstars today. They basically said that they know that they had to rewrite episode 5. The director came out and said that he had a great episode 5. And that he had to squash it because the Marvel executives made him redo it.
Yeah.
And we don't know what it was. There was no information about what it was. He didn't allude to what was in the episode or what happened. And Eric Voss's theory was that maybe he was going back, to the time, of Infinity War or even the Endgame or the original Avengers.
Looking for answers.
And
but then you got to pay those actors and
maybe it was going to potentially undo something that happened in the history of Marvel, which they didn't want to do, and you kind of figure that out. But I love the ultimate ending of this is eventually he talks about, he's like, he goes back to the point in season 1 where he says, I'm destined to have a throne. I'm burdened with glorious purpose.
Yeah.
And we found out what that meant.
Yeah.
They paid that off, which I thought was just, again.
Yeah, great.
These are things that he said in the Avengers movie, in season 1 of Thor, in Thor 2, Thor 1 and Thor 2.
When Odin's holding on to him and he's slipping into the not the Bifrost.
Well, he falls off the Rainbow Bridge.
He falls off the Rainbow Bridge and he goes back into time or something. He gets teleported somewhere. Later, we know that it was with Thanos that kind of found him. But he says that same line. Yeah. Right.
He says,
I'm
burdened
for all of us.
Yeah, with glorious purpose. So
excellent.
I just thought this was such a brilliant way to pay that off. Yeah. So what ends up happening, and I know there's people out there who are kind of still confused about what happened.
Well, to be honest, it is confusing. I've said that from the very beginning. When you deal with time travel and the multiverse and timelines and things like that, it's very confusing. I was a little confused throughout this whole series. I really was. I thought they did a great job of at least tempering some of that confusion with the explanation.
But he jumps out. He volunteers to go out onto the bridge that's going out towards the loom, and he's not being spaghettified. His clothes are being ripped off of him, and you can see that his green, energy, his Loki god energy is like exuding off of him and protecting him from the radiation, temporal radiation, but his clothes get ripped off, and his new Loki costume forms all around him
with the horns, the classic horns,
and he uses his magic and destroys the loom. And then he grabs all the branch timelines. All of a sudden, go dead.
Yeah.
And he grabs them all and imbues them with his Loki powers. You see his green magic energy. And he imbues each one of these timelines, and he's grabbing them, and he's walking through space and grabbing.
He actually becomes the loom himself. He becomes a conduit for these branch timelines,
and he's keeping them alive with his energy.
Right.
And we eventually see him open a portal in space. He goes to the end of all time, where He Who Remains lived on that rock, finds his old throne, and kind of, reforms or recasts the throne, sits on it, holding all the timelines in his hands, and then the screen rotates 100 or 90 degrees, and we see that it's formed that where he is on the throne has formed the shape of the World Tree which was in Asgard originally. If you remember, I think it was Thor 2, The Dark World, where we went to Asgard. You saw the World Tree
right
underneath of Asgard. When it kind of turns upside down, that's where the World Tree was. But he basically formed a new World Tree that is now holding all of these branch timelines together, and he's keeping them all alive himself. So he got his throne, and he realized his glorious purpose.
Right.
And it was just awesome.
Really smart.
Yeah.
Great writing.
And he went through a very similar, I'll say similar, it's a strong word, but he went through most recently, probably in the last, I think, 5-6 years in the comic books, and I think the success of Tom Hiddleston as the Loki character prompted Marvel Comics to use the character more and in a different way.
Yeah.
And so he went through a very similar, I'll say, a redemption arc, not similar. He went through a redemption arc in the comic books where he became, instead of the god of mischief, he became the god of stories.
Yeah.
And this is kind of that same type of evolution of Loki from the god of mischief, causing all this trouble, invading New York, doing all the things he did, to now being the god of stories, who's now basically at the center of all time, holding all these branches together. I thought it was brilliant.
Oh, one of the greatest character arcs in Marvel, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, right up there with Tony Stark, Iron Man. I mean, just brilliant.
And Tom Hiddleston is, they knew they had a star in their hands when they cast him in the original Thor movie. They knew they had a star in their hands when they made him the villain of the original Avengers movie. Obviously maintained him all the way through until he got killed in Endgame, and then brought him back for his own TV series. He has just crushed it, this role. Just crushed it.
Yeah.
And he's a star, obviously.
We would be remiss to not mention that the actor strike is over.
Well, that's in our news.
Okay.
Hang on a second.
No other project out there was pushed on late night talk television, but he was. He was on one of the late night talk televisions, and
recently,
to promote Loki, the finale of Loki. And
after the strike
ended, he was one of the first actors to get out there in public to promote his show, and he's such a great actor, awesome.
Just killed it.
Yeah.
And I think the other we were all wondering, how does this fit into the larger Marvel story? Where does this character go from here? Are we going to see Loki again? Are we going to get a Loki season 3? What happens to the TVA? We felt that they have something to do with Deadpool 3, right?
Let's talk about the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room. Are they stuck with the current projection of Kang? Are they stuck now with that? Did they dig themselves a hole and solidify Kang's future in the MCU?
I don't know, because again, they even alluded to on the finale what happened to the one variant in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And remember, they were, after he has this moment where he's now in the center of this World Tree environment, the TVA is still operational. They're still functioning, and we see Mobius and B-15 and everybody else talking, and
they make reference to finding his variant.
They say, yeah, they're basically the TVA's job now is to find most of the things that they're going after are the variants of Kang, and trying to eliminate them if and when possible. And he says there was an incident, but it was handled. It was an incident in a parallel of 616. Universe, right? And he said, but that was taken care of.
Yeah.
And so they alluded to what happened in the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. But it looks like the TVA is going to be now going off and hunting all the variants of Kang so that a multiverse world war doesn't start. They brought back Miss Minutes, and they said, "Oh, can we trust her again?" We're like, "Well, we're not really sure."
Kill us all. That was funny.
Yeah. We know Ravonna Renslayer was purged, and we saw her at the end of the show in the Void, and Eliath was kind of bearing down on her, but then they kind of cut away. We don't really know what happens there. So is she
that was really
gone?
The only cliffhanger that they didn't close out.
Right. But yeah, and then I think kind of some level of satisfaction. Mobius is like, "Hey, I'm quitting," and he just wanted to go back and watch his original variant or the original part of him, the scene where Loki took him from. Watch him with his kids. Yeah. And I want to stand here and watch for a while. And it was really cool. I mean, I just thought very different than Gen V, very different pacing, different concept, but it was just so well done.
Yeah.
It was just a home run.
Yeah,
like you said, it was just a home run. It was a
home run.
Yeah.
It was a home run. And I think it moves the MCU in the right direction. I mean, it definitely sets the tone where they should be and where they should be getting back.
Right. Well, now we know how and why the TVA may be involved in Deadpool 3. We know Mobius and Miss Minutes are both back, and so we know that they can be involved in that movie now, and they still exist, right? Big questions are what happens to Loki. Are we ever going to see Loki again? Are we going to see him in the Kang Dynasty movie? Are we going to see him in Secret Wars? I have a hard time believing they don't bring Tom Hiddleston back in some capacity. Are we going to get a Loki season 3? Big question. They could just not do one, and this would be a perfect ending to the series.
I don't think they should do one.
I don't either.
I think they should wrap it up and leave it the way they did, because it really ended. It ended on top, right? It ended on top. Yeah. It was like a Seinfeld kind of ending.
I agree.
It ended much better than the Seinfeld prison scene, but really good. I think they should just leave it at 2 and be done with it.
And find some way. I mean, if
bring
Loki,
the character back in other projects.
Yeah, but if Loki is now responsible for, maintaining all these alternate timelines, does he play a role in Secret Wars, or is he the villain of Secret Wars now?
Maybe he gets.
I don't know. Is he now like the Beyonder, or whatever? I don't know. Who knows?
Does he have enough power to fight the Beyonder?
Well, yeah. Who knows? But I have a hard time believing we're not going to see Tom Hiddleston as that character again. It's just. He just did so well. So.
But season 3, I would not be mad if they didn't have it.
Me either.
Yeah,
they just, and again, too many times there's a money grab, and they're like, "Oh, well, the first 2 seasons were so successful, we're just going to do a third." And sometimes that's like the biggest mistake. Sometimes just leave it as it is, and if they did one, it better be a good story, better be a good plot, better be the same writers, So, and again, we know some of these writers are now working on the Blade script, right?
Yeah.
So, and they're working on Daredevil Born Again, right? So, good. They found out who their
superstars are.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not screwing around with it. They found a horse that wins races, and they're not gonna go to the barn and pull out some, crippled glue horse.
Well, we can kind of talk a little bit about that later on, too. All right, well, let's jump into our news section. Only a couple of things that we wanted to talk about this week. As Titanium alluded to earlier, the actors' strike is now officially over, and everybody is back to work again. Studios are now back. Actors are getting back on set. They're back to work. They can promote projects. They can go on talk shows. They can do everything, right? So they're now free and clear to kind of go back to work. And I know all the television studios and the movie houses are now all scrambling to get their properties back online and get them rolling again.
A lot of actors hit social media to kind of promote their projects and thank the audiences for watching their projects, which I thought was a class act. Anybody that did that, I thought it was a really good good thing that they acknowledged that, hey, this strike took me out of the public eye, but you guys spent your hard-earned dollar to come see my show, come watch my movie, and I thank you for it. I thought that was classy.
Yeah, and Marvel actually released a clip the other day. Brie Larson wasn't able to go out and promote the Marvel's movie. She wasn't able to do any press, wasn't able to go on the talk shows. She showed up in Times Square on Thursday to surprise people who went to see the movie Thursday evening. She showed up there and just surprised everybody. So, I mean, they know that this actor strike has hurt the industry, has hurt their audience, has hurt, projects that they had, now and in the future. But I think they're going to be working, and hopefully they're motivated to work even harder now. So, all good. But there is a casualty of this. We knew this was coming.
Big casualty.
And I think Marvel specifically was waiting for the strike to officially be over, because I think they knew this already. But until the strike was over, they didn't know how bad it was going to be. But they did finally change their entire release schedule because of the strike. And again, this is a huge major casualty. We knew these projects were going to be delayed. We knew there was going to be some changes. We've heard some rumors, and we've covered them here on the show. But here's the real deal now. This is just not good news. So Deadpool 3 is being moved from the May 3rd date. They're not going to be able to do the May 3rd date. As a matter of fact, I heard yesterday that they're going to be back on set filming just before Thanksgiving, so within the next week or two. So they're going to be back on set filming again before the holidays. But they are hard at work getting back on set to get that movie back on track. So it has been moved from its May 3rd date to the July 26th date next summer. That was occupied by Captain America 4 at the time. Captain America 4 is moved from that July 26th date to February 14th, 2025. So it has been moved out of the entire schedule next year.
You know what the rumors are about that.
Well, you told me. You told me a rumor. I'd like you to tell our audience what you heard.
They did a test screening and it flopped. It did not go well. They did a test screening and it did not go well. They scheduled some emergency reshoots starting in January.
January, February, March, you said. They're going to be doing reshoots for 3 months.
3 months. They're doing reshoots. They're getting the actors back in shape. They're getting the actors back. They're going over some of the footage, and they're rewriting some of it because it was a jumbled mess.
Did not do well in the test screen.
No, and rightfully so. I think...
Because there was a rumor that this movie would be moved up to take that May slot that Deadpool had to vacate because it was closer to being finished.
Yeah.
And so we heard the rumor that they were going to pull this one up into May and move Deadpool into July. But now what we're being told is, well, once that test screening hit and it didn't go well, they're like, okay, yeah, this movie's not going to be ready for May.
I just think at Marvel behind the scenes, there's like, okay, Tina, Sam, Paul, and Amy and Veronica, you guys go into this, watch this movie and give us your opinion. And they're like, oh, this movie's awesome. It's so great. And now they're like, you guys are fired. You're no longer test screening any movie. We're going to put new people in there, give fresh eyes to it. And I think Kevin Feige is now taking more of a hands-on role, not this 160-degree kind of, I'm going to be way up here. I'm going to be 2 miles above the earth looking down on these projects. I think he's down on earth with his hands in the mud and dirt and actually making some decisions.
And we're going to talk about a situation from the Marvels later on. I just have a hard time believing anybody with a brain is actually screening these movies. Because we've identified at least a couple of examples in this movie we saw today that if anybody were to see that in advance, they would have said something that doesn't work. You can't do that. You got to fix that. There's something wrong here.
Yeah.
See, let's go through what just happened, and then I'll tell you why this is wrong. And your audience is going to notice it, and they're going to notice that was a mistake.
Yeah.
And
it's just messy.
I just think, to your point, Titanium, I just think maybe I don't know who they're inviting to these test screenings. I have no idea whether they're random people or they're trusted people that they know, or they're people that are under NDA and they've used them before, so they know they're not going to say anything, and they're such fanboys that they're just happy to be invited. They don't want to say anything bad about this thing because they'll not get invited back.
Correct.
I think you're doing the movie a disservice by doing that.
Agreed.
Oh, just keep inviting me. I thought it was awesome. You guys did such a great job. Yeah. Just keep inviting me back. And you and I would go in there like, I'm going to give you my honest opinion.
Yeah.
You can't do that, and here's why. Here's why it doesn't work. And I'm hopeful that what you just said is true, that Kevin Feige's becoming more involved now and be having, or some of the other executives at Marvel that know better are now basically saying, yeah, we can't keep disappointing our audience. We can't do it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's been moved to February 14th, Valentine's Day of 2025. The Thunderbolts, which was really originally on the schedule for next December 20th of next year, that's been moved to July 25th of 2025. And Blade has been moved from February of 2025 all the way back to November of 2025. So let's break this out for our audience. Next year, 2024, we currently have one movie coming from Marvel Studios next year.
One movie from Marvel.
Deadpool 3 in July of next year will be the only Marvel Studios movie on the schedule.
In some weird, twisted way, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm not
disappointed, but I would rather have one really good movie than 4 lackluster movies.
Than 4 movies that
should never have been made or were rushed to the screen or whatever.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So I hope by pushing these back, they get more time to get them right. And we've all said that all along. Look, this show will suffer, right? The fact that we only have one movie to review next year, we'll definitely be feeling it from an industry perspective, those of us who review this content. But to your point, it may be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Take your time, do it right, and hopefully Deadpool is being done right, and it'll...
So here, I wanted to bring this up because here's what we know about 2025 so far. We're going to have Captain America 4 in February. We've got the Thunderbolts in July of that year, and we've got Blade in October. So that would be 3 movies currently on the schedule for that year. There's another really important movie that's...
not even been talked about.
Not been talked about, and is on the schedule for 2025, was originally in that February date, and was shuffled around and moved. And that's the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. So that movie was supposed to come out early in 2024. It had been moved back because of the actor strike and a bunch of other things. And Marvel has told us, and I think the director recently, Matt Shackman, came out and said, "Look, the actor strike is hurting us. We can't begin filming. We want to begin filming, but we can't. We want to
nail down the actors.
We want to nail down the actors on their contracts, but we also want to make an announcement.
Right.
And we can't do that until the strike's over." I have a feeling an announcement is forthcoming. I think we might get that announcement before the end of the year. I could be wrong, but I'm hopeful that we do get that announcement, because I have a feeling if they want to make a May date in 2025, right around Memorial Day weekend, that's when Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame were released. That's where their big movies that they're expected to make a huge splash at the box office. The beginning of the summer movie season is in May, and that's where they want their big projects to land. If they're going to make a May date, which there's an opening on the schedule for a May project, they have to get that thing started early in 2024 to make a May 2025 date. I hope that...
I agree with you. I really do. I would love that to happen and come to fruition. But let me talk out of my ass here for a minute. Maybe they should punt 1 or 2 of these movies and just have 2 movies a year instead of 3, or a very ambitious 4. Maybe they punt Thunderbolts? I mean, they haven't really started much on that at all. They haven't been filming at all. Maybe a little bit of pre-production on that. I don't know. How good is it? If you're looking at Captain America 4 with these major reshoots, and the test screenings that leaked that they were bad. I mean, and Marvel is in a tough place right now. I still think they're not done. I still think we shouldn't write them off, or they're in the garbage. They're a dumpster fire that just needs to be, hosed down. I don't think that, but I think they're a little discombobulated right now.
Well, I mean, and I think they've obviously set an ambitious plan in at least the plan.
So, do you think they should punt Thunderbolts?
Maybe. And here's the reason I say maybe. I mean, I think they could just basically not do the project, which would definitely be maybe not a bad thing. But I think if that project fit into the grand scheme of things, they should continue to do it. And whether it played a role in Kang Dynasty or help move the plot along for Secret Wars or whatever it might be, there's got to be a reason they're doing that project, right? We again have heard the rumors of you were going to get the Red Hulk in Captain America 4, but he's going to play a huge role in Thunderbolts, is from what we understand. So maybe they need to do that movie. From my perspective, if you want to have a Kang Dynasty, Avengers Kang Dynasty in 2026, and if you want to do Secret Wars in 2027 and 2029 or whatever you're going to do, we've talked about this. There's rumors they want to bring back the original Avengers. These guys aren't spring chickens.
No.
And, you can't keep punting these projects down the next 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, what? Robert Downey Jr.'s got to be close to 60 now already. Yeah. And so you're not going to film that movie for 5 more years. He's going to be in his mid-60s. It's like, can't keep punting that down the road. So would I rather them, not do one of these projects or move it to the next year so that they focus on the ones and get them right? Yeah. But at the same time, I want them to continue moving the story forward. I mean, and look, as bad as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania did in the box office, as bad as it was panned by all the critics except for Titanium, who loved it, because he loves Paul Rudd.
I do like Paul Rudd.
But as bad as that was, the question is, does Kang make sense? Does he resonate with the audience? Should we continue on with that character? We know what's going on with Jonathan Majors. Big questions going on. And I can't wait to hear answers. And who knows when we're going to hear them. Look, Comic-Con tickets go on sale this weekend coming up.
The
17th?
17th.
Saturday, right?
Is that Saturday?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's Friday.
Is it Friday? I thought it was this Saturday. So maybe it's
Saturday.
I think it's this Saturday.
Okay. I'll be on my computer.
We'll be on our computers. Remember, we made that mistake last year.
That's true.
So if we get tickets to go to Comic-Con, I think the Comic-Con next year is going to be actually really good because of all these projects that have been pushed, and they're going to want to start promoting them and talking about them, and maybe we get some answers then. I don't know.
You had mentioned bringing back some of the original Avengers and Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, some of the OGs of Avengers. Do you think? I don't know. I just think it's a desperate call. I mean,
of course it is.
What would they be used in?
Of course it is.
What would they be used in? Secret Wars?
Yeah.
Okay, Secret Wars. When is Secret Wars coming out?
28, 27?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So years from now, and you're talking about them now, putting them in projects now.
So that's a great question, Titanium. Why would because the fact this rumor comes out, I think it's a desperate attempt to keep people interested, to keep people excited. And
the way the Marvels trailer put the OGs in the beginning of that, they inserted them into a trailer that had nothing to do with the movie. It was so...
It didn't.
It was bizarre.
The world needs heroes.
It was gratuitous. It was so desperate and so cheesy. I just cringed. I was just like, are they in the movie? No. They're not. These are flashbacks. These are scenes from, by the way, the most popular Marvel movies out there. They just happen to use those clips.
In the trailer to promote a movie that doesn't feature them at all.
At all! That just upset me. So, again, in that vein, I think mentioning them coming back in Secret Wars is desperate. Way too early. I mean, they haven't casted Secret Wars, have they? The script's not even written. So I think it's just really desperate.
And again, I think we'll as we get into our topic of the week this week, we'll talk about the state of things over there.
Let's jump in. Let's jump in.
our top of the week is our review of the Marvels movie, brought to us by our friends at Studio GG Studios. And I have to mention, I just saw a wonderful announcement by Studio G, and I probably should just read this for our audience because it's so compelling. I mean, it was news that I haven't seen. So Studio G tweeted out, Studio GG Studios comic book series based on Super Talk's real superheroes, Professor Pettis and Titanium Tony, is out. Using AI, Studio GG Studios has been able to create a comic book environment for all Super Talk viewers and fans. The viewers can feel as though they are inside the Super Talk city of Badooville, fighting alongside the Professor, Titanium, and their sidekick Siren as they watch what happens on the news, Badooville Channel 4. You got to go check out Studio GG Studios, guys, and we'll put a link to this in the description of the show notes. You got to go check this out. They've created an AI comic book environment based on our podcast, which is wow. I mean, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. But, yeah, so thanks really to Studio cool. G. Yeah. Really appreciate it. You guys really help us out. And this is the kind of creative stuff that, we don't have brains big enough to think of these things. But thanks, Studio G. That's awesome. So let's get into the Marvels movie. And again,
we just walked out of the theater.
Literally came straight here to the set from the theater.
Yeah. And we saw it in IMAX. We saw it at the Air and Space Museum, which is phenomenal. Which is a really great theater. Venue. Great theater. IMAX. The sound was tremendous.
Yeah, we wanted to give this movie as much opportunity to wow us as possible. And again, Tony and I have not been shy about our expectations for this movie.
Right.
We're not very high.
Lukewarm. I've been lukewarm from the very beginning.
Not very high.
No. We were both like, you know what? We're both lukewarm. Let's get excited for this movie. Let's spend the money for IMAX. Let's go do it right. Let's see. We haven't seen a movie in a long time in IMAX.
Right.
Let's go see this in IMAX, and let's hopefully blow us out of the water.
And
egg. And okay. You could smell that smell. Awful.
So what I'm going to say, and I told you in the ride home I was going to save this for the podcast. I think this is the one Marvel movie I've enjoyed the least. Of every Marvel movie I've ever seen, I enjoyed this movie the least. They tried to make it funny, and it wasn't. They tried to make it interesting, and it wasn't. Some good special effects, yes. I thought they did a few things well, but I did not enjoy this movie. As a matter of fact, I think universally, the bottom 2 or 3 movies on the Marvel rankings list, and I haven't pulled it up recently, I can't remember, but let's just use these as examples. The Eternals, Thor the Dark World, Thor 2 the Dark World, and the original Incredible Hulk movie with, why do I always forget his name? Edward Norton.
A lot of people have that at the bottom of the list.
I would watch all 3 of those movies again. And I have watched all 3 of those movies multiple times. I would watch all of them again before I ever would watch this movie.
Wow.
This movie will come out on streaming services. It'll come out on Disney Plus. I will not watch it again.
Yeah.
It's that bad. So take it for this, guys. There's so many things about this movie that just bothered me. And we'll give the spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie, you don't want to hear certain things. You don't want to know how it ends. You don't want to hear.
Cute. That was very nice of you, and it's actually, I find that adorable that you're actually giving people a spoiler warning. So if they would see the movie, which they're not.
My recommendation to everybody out there is
wait till it's on streaming.
Do not spend your money. Yeah. You're not missing anything.
Yeah.
Everything that's important in this movie and everything important that happens in this movie, we're going to tell you tonight on our podcast. You do not need to go see this movie. Yeah. I'm just telling. There was nothing that happened in this movie tonight that had I not seen it on the screen, I'd been upset about.
Well, let me give a couple of positives about it, okay? Because it's not all negative.
It's an hour and a half long. That's a positive. One of the shortest Marvel movies ever.
And the sound is great, although we did see it in IMAX. And some of the special effects are amazing, and they did a really good job. Brie Larson is a smoke show. There's no doubt about that. She's a smoke show. And Ms. Marvel, again, super cute. A little, like you said, Professor, she's a little more annoying in this. But I don't think Ms. Marvel was the lowest streamed show on Disney Plus. It has a rabid, toxic, in my opinion, toxic fan base that if you don't agree with them, they attack you in a vicious way. That is the Ms. Marvel fan base, as far as I'm concerned, in my experience with that. A lot of it came out with, middle-aged white men don't like this because they don't understand it, and they're giving their opinions and blah, blah. Well, first of all, I'm Hispanic, pendejo. Second of all, opinions are like assholes. We all got them. So why not give our opinion? Everybody should have an opinion. We respect people's opinion. But to attack people because of their gender or color or race, I think that's toxic, and you're basically bullying people. I don't agree with that. So here's our opinion of it. I thought she was great. Brie Larson is a smoke show. I thought some of the special effects were okay, but the rest of it was clumsy, trash. I didn't think the story was fluid at all. There was a weird Bollywood scene in the middle of it. It was too comical and tried to get too serious. I'm like, pick what you want to be. You want to be a comedy, or are you going to be this in-depth, serious, kind of emotional bonding with these three superheroes? Again, these superheroes are basically B-level superheroes. I don't think the majority of the fan base asked for an individual movie from these superheroes. Nick Fury was funny at times. I didn't like the flirking thing with the cats. I thought that was kind of stupid, to be honest with you. I just didn't get that. A lot of it was just dumb. And the professor pointed out some things while we were sitting there. It was like, wait, what just happened? Why? And I'll let him get into it, because it's right. It was just messy. And I didn't really connect. And I know what you're going to say. Well, it wasn't made for you. You're not. I understand that.
And that's one thing I was going to say, Tim. I think this movie may resonate with female comic book fans. I think it might. I think it might resonate with younger fans, like, teenagers, ones that like the Ms. Marvel.
Or let me add to that list, Professor, shills. Hollywood people that no matter what have to say the right things so that they stay in favor of their sources, or they think they're staying in favor with this little handful fan base that they don't want to offend because they're nasty, and they will come after them. So I agree with you, except for the people that are cowards about speaking their mind or what they truly feel because they want to be part of whatever else everybody else is. And I think Hollywood shills, people that have a motivation to say good things about a project.
I mean, if I were a 10-year-old female fan of Marvel and a female fan of comic books, this movie, I know, it'd be weird for us to do a podcast together, that's for sure. But this movie might be one that I would enjoy and be excited to go to. But I'm not that person. Yeah. And so my question then becomes, well, what audience are they trying to go after here? And we've talked about this, that we feel they've gone out of their way to try to appease a segment of their potential audience that's been ignored or not focused on in the past. And you know what? If that's who you're trying to sway to go see this movie, I hope they all go see it.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way this movie's going to make money. Because those of us who are the hardcore comic book fans that bought comic books for 40 years, because we enjoyed them, we don't want to see this stuff. We don't want to see this movie.
Newsflash, Professor. I checked my phone on the way after the movie on the way here, and it did not do well in the box office.
So the returns are already in for the weekend.
The returns are projected.
Did they count our 2 IMAX tickets?
Yes.
Okay.
See, we did our support, but they're projecting this to be the lowest grossing opening weekend of any Marvel movie.
Well, we predicted that already.
They predicted it was going to be lower than Black Adam and The Flash. Now they're saying that it's the lowest
of any comic book
Marvel, and I think
not just Marvel, but any comic book movie,
which is one of the lowest was the Incredible Hulk. That Edward Norton
opening weekend
was one of the lowest.
Wow. Yeah.
That speaks volume, people. So regardless of what you think about our opinion, look at the box office. Look at what the majority of fans are saying. And that right there is a call out to, hey, we're not going to go and spend our money on this trash. So I think what I saw was domestically, it was somewhere around 42,
wow,
50 million.
So, yeah, we spoke about this when we talked about the trouble that Marvel was in a few weeks ago, and I'll pull up my statistics here.
I think globally, I thought I saw a number of maybe 130, 125.
So the lowest opening box office weekend was The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton.
Yep.
$55.4 million.
55, which means if this comes in...
And the second lowest was the original Ant-Man at $57.2 million. Everything else is over 60s. There's a couple 60 in the mid-60s, but Thor, original Captain America, in the mid-60s. So if this does worse than $55.4 million in an opening weekend...
It will hold the lowest
in Marvel's history.
They're going to say that it's people like you and me that bash it. Go ahead. They're going to say that the writer's strike really affected this. And maybe it did. I'll give them that. Maybe it really did.
Well, the actors couldn't promote it.
That's true.
They couldn't go out and promote the movie.
I've never been excited for a movie or swayed to see a movie because an actor showed up on Jimmy Kimmel and said, "This is great. It's really fun," and showed a special clip.
So I'm going to tell you how bad this really is. People remember that Black Widow, right? Not a good movie, but Black Widow was released during a pandemic.
Yeah.
A pandemic, and we were trying to convince people to go back to movie theaters because they felt unsafe going out in public and had to wear masks everywhere and everything else.
And wasn't it released simultaneously?
It was released simultaneously on streaming at home and in the movie theaters.
Right.
It made $80 million its opening weekend. During a pandemic.
When they were selling less tickets because you couldn't sit next to people.
Right.
You had to spread out.
Right.
They had X's over seats. Remember that?
Right. So, So let's talk about some of the problems. Here, I'll talk about a couple before we get into that. I'll talk about a couple of things I did like about the movie.
There you go.
I thought the character of Captain Rambeau, Tiona Paris played, I thought the character was done well. I thought her powers were very cool. I enjoyed what they did with that character and how that character figured out how to fly and how she figured out she could absorb energy and reproject it back at people. I thought that was really well done, and I liked the character so much so that I would be happy to see that character again. I enjoyed that character.
Not as a lead character, though.
No, I would like to see that character again in some project, but I liked what they did with that character.
Okay.
But let's talk about the bad thing. That was like one good thing I liked about the
Nothing
movie.
else?
No, that was...
Well, you said the special effects were pretty good.
Yeah, some of
the sound and the special effects.
They did a really good job with what they did with the portals and showing the cracks in the sky. Like, you remember when they did that at the end of the Morbius movie when they showed the crack in the sky that was supposed to be from Doctor Strange Spider-Man No Way Home, and they did the crack, and there was like, you could obviously see somebody like used a paintbrush to like paint it on the screen after the fact. It was so bad.
Yeah.
No, but the way that they did the cracks in space, that when they were using those portals to siphon, or when they were using the portals to siphon resources from different planets, I thought that was really well done. Special effects I thought were really good. Here's the things about the movie that just were so bad. Look, okay. I think Iman Vellani, like you said, cute. She's very, I think, at times likable, and I think there were parts of her performance that were good. But
Do
somebody,
you think she's the future of Marvel?
that's what we hear. But somebody at some point in time said, when you scream and whine when you're scared, it's really funny. And somebody told her that. And so they said, keep doing that. And I'm going to say whoever told her that and whoever told her to keep doing that should be shot, because it is the most annoying thing I've ever heard in my life. And you don't come across funny, you don't come across likable, you come across as annoying. So stop doing it. I would rather you never do that, honestly. Laugh, be funny that way. Or make a joke, be funny that way. Don't whine and scream at the same time.
Some of the jokes were funny. I kind of giggled at two things. But
my God. The one laugh that I got the entire movie, and the fact that you have to take, Ms. Marvel's entire family is now stars of the movie, and they play, portions of different events of the movie. And the one funny part of the movie at the end of the movie, her mom is talking to her brother and saying, this would be a great house to raise a family in. And he picks up the remote control and he starts pointing at her and starts trying to hit the mute button. That was funny.
Yeah.
That was a good joke. I enjoyed that. Yeah. I actually got a chuckle out of that one.
When Miss Marvel is sitting in the spaceship and she's looking at Captain Marvel being a fangirl, and she goes, "Captain, my captain," I was like, oh,
Captain, my captain.
What a ridiculous joke. I mean, some of the jokes were so bad and corny. Some of them were cute and timely, but there were way too many of them. Way too many of them.
And she was way too fangirly, too much. I mean, it's almost too much. And then some of the inconsistencies we talked about. So there's
get into those.
You've seen in the trailers that their powers are entangled because of these rips in space. Both Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris's character, Captain Marvel and Captain Rainbow, had touched one of these portals at the same time. And it made their powers, since they're all based on electromagnetic energy, they got entangled. So anytime that any of them used their powers at the same time, they would basically swap, they'd teleport. And we've seen this in a lot of the trailers, that they're use their powers and they teleport to where the other person was.
But it seemed like it wasn't very consistent. Is that because they had to use them at the same time?
Same time. Had to be at the same time.
So if I just use mine...
That's why Captain Marvel said, don't use your powers, because she was using hers. And if they tried to use them at the same time, that's when they would forcibly swap. And they figured that out later in the movie, that they could actually use it to their advantage. If they tried to do something at the same time, they would actually purposely swap. So that was kind of fun. They kind of figured that out.
But if only one of them was using it, it was okay.
It was fine. Just not at the same time. Because the two that were using it at the same time would swap.
That wasn't explained very well. That was that was irritating for me, because I was like, it's inconsistent. What's going on here?
But that's why. So they maybe didn't do a very good job of explaining that. I kind of picked up on that, but maybe it wasn't clear enough to everybody. But in that portion of the movie, in the beginning of the movie, the three of them are being teleported to where each of the others are, and Captain Marvel's on a Kree spaceship, and Captain Rambeau is on the planet that Captain Marvel was on, because she had been teleported there, and Ms. Marvel's in her house. And the three of them are now all being swapped back and forth. And eventually, at one point in time, both Captain Marvel and Captain Rambeau and Nick Fury are at Ms. Marvel's house. And Ms. Marvel had been teleported to where Captain Marvel was. And Captain Marvel was back there and runs into Marie Rambeau, which is kind of awkward. They had this awkward moment trying to, I haven't seen you, Lieutenant Trouble. She's like, I'm Captain Rambeau. It was so bad. But at one point in time, she flies off. She flies off to go find her. And the minute Ms. Marvel uses her powers, they swap again. So now Ms. Marvel is falling in the sky where Captain Rambeau was flying.
Right.
Or not, where Captain Marvel was flying. And she's screaming, the annoying scream in the air up there. And she's in plain clothes. The entire time leading up to that, she's in her Ms. Marvel costume. And then all of a sudden, they swap again, and she's now in a T-shirt and a pullover.
A flannel.
Flannel and a T-shirt. She's falling through the sky. It's like, what happened to her uniform?
We both looked at each other at that point and was like, wait a minute. How did she get the street clothes?
She was in her uniform the entire movie until that last swap, and now she's in plain clothes. And where did they come from?
It was weird.
And again, I figured out why they did that, because eventually Captain Rainbow and Ms. Marvel teleport to where Brie Larson is, and she's on the Kree ship, and they're now being taken prisoners by the Kree, and they didn't want Dar-Ben to see that Ms. Marvel had a bangle on because she was looking for the other bangle.
So she could pull
the fact they call it a bangle is like also one of the most annoying things in the world.
Yeah.
The bangle's the name of a band. It's not the name of a space device, people. Come on. So they didn't want her to see that, so she had to have a flannel to be able to pull up over her over the bangle so that Dar-Ben wouldn't see it. So I know why they did it.
Stop calling her Dar-Ben. It's Dar-Boring.
Yeah.
Dar-Boring.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But so that inconsistency was bad. The fact that she was in plain clothes all of a sudden when she had been in her uniform the entire time, and I was like, you can't do that. Like I said, if you had screened the movie, if you had seen the movie in advance, you would have said to somebody, unless you're some shill, you would have said to somebody, you can't do that. It's a plot hole.
Yeah. People are going to notice that.
People are going to see that, and it's going to look bad.
Bad.
Guess what, people? It looked bad.
Yeah.
Okay? And then the other inconsistency is they eventually get both bangles. Dar-Boring, gets both bangles, and she siphons too much power and basically blows herself up. And the bangles now come back, and Ms. Marvel's able to put them both on. Oh, that doesn't hurt her.
Right.
Dar-Ben, explodes, but Ms. Marvel put them both on. But then eventually she has both of them, and she uses them. And the next time we see her, she only has one of them on. And at the end of the movie, she only has one of them on. Where'd the other one go?
Right.
What happened to it? Why isn't she wearing it anymore?
Right.
What are they going to do with the other bang?
And I thought in the mid-credit scene, I thought that Monica Rambeau had one on, but I'm not 100% sure.
I don't think so.
But
she
there was no point in time that she got it. She
couldn't have had it on. I didn't think she did, but
she went through the thing, she closed it, and she was trapped there. How would she?
But what happened to the other bangle? Where is it? And why is she was wearing both of them, and now she's only wearing one of them again? Well, what happened to him?
Yeah,
just those things. And okay, let's talk about Dar-Ben.
Dar-Boring,
the worst Marvel villain in any movie ever, without question.
No question.
People thought Kang was terrible in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. People thought we wasted, Gore the God Butcher in Thor: Love and Thunder. Could have done better there. People thought the Dark Elves were terrible in Thor: The Dark World.
What's the Russian guy that started and controlled the Red Room that was in Black Widow?
And Taskmaster.
Awful villain.
Yeah.
That was
This
awful.
is the worst.
This is right next to that one. In my opinion, those two villains are
not
worst.
Scary.
No menacing.
No backstory at all.
No depth to the character.
No development of the character. No motivation. All of a sudden she just wants to.
Well, they tried to give you some motivation.
Well, and that was the other thing that they did. They basically said, okay, Captain Marvel was pissed, and so she went and destroyed the Supreme Intelligence, which then pretty much killed the Kree homeworld of Hala.
Well, the civilization went into chaos.
Civil
War, yeah.
And they destroyed their sun, and they're in a drought and a famine and all this other stuff. And so the planet basically is dying because they got rid of their artificial intelligence being that controlled everything. And so you're really the reason why our planet's dying. And so they painted her as this, and there's truth to that. She did do all that, right? But they made it seem like Dar-Ben was so mad about that she was going to start taking it out on Captain Marvel. No, she's trying to save her own planet. So they tried to humanize her a little bit, but you're doing evil things to save your own planet. I didn't get it. And didn't understand why all of a sudden she's got this one bangle on and she can fight 3 superheroes at the same time, but the one superhero who has the other bangle can't. Just so much of it just didn't work.
The hammer was gratuitous. I mean,
terrible,
awful. Didn't really need it. I guess it was a prop or to make the
Titanium. We've talked about this. Of all the supervillains in Marvel Comics history,
I have a theory for that. I told you.
You told me. You gave me a great theory, but I'm going to just say, why would you pick this one to be the villain of the... When we've talked about this so often, that villains make the movie.
Yeah.
You have a compelling villain, the movie will be successful. We've seen this time and again. Even the concept of a villain, if done properly, like the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, was a concept of a villain. There was no Mandarin. As a matter of fact, it was Titus Slattery, the actor. You know, but that concept of a villain was compelling.
Yeah.
If done properly. This is the worst villain ever. So why would you pick this villain? Nobody knows anything about him. No history in the comics at all. No real, like, oh my God, it's Dar-Ben?
Was a character in the comics.
But it's Dar-Ben? Oh, we're using Dar-Ben?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My theory, of course, that I told the professor is that they used a character that was expendable. A character that people really wouldn't mind if it disappeared and it was just a one-off in this movie. Which I think is a mistake, because you only have certain windows, times, and opportunity to fill those voids and to fill those characters and to fill those actors and projects with really compelling, good villains. And it's true. And there's so many that they could have used instead of this one, but I think they used it because they knew it was expandable. Like, oh, well, she's going to die, so let's not waste one of these really good villains, and we'll just put this mid-level villain in there. But it didn't work.
So that was horrible.
Yeah.
So we know Goose the cat, the Flurkin, is in the movie. And there's this subplot where all of a sudden Goose is laying eggs around the space station. And all these baby Flurkins are born. And the space station is crashing. So they have to use the Flurkins to actually eat all the people on the space station so they can put all the Flurkins into one of the escape shuttles and save everybody. Horrible idea, horrible concept. The fact that they actually were playing music while they were running around with Flurkins trying to get them to eat people, so bad.
That was bad writing.
So bad. And then don't even get me started. We've heard rumors that the reason this movie is an hour and a half long is because they cut out a large portion of the movie that was on the singing planet. I can't remember the name of the planet. So we find out that she's married to the prince of this planet. Oh, this is some surprise wedding and it's ceremonial. Aladdin or something like that. And they go there and they're introduced in song, and then they do this big dance scene where they're both singing to each other, and I'm like, okay, I got to go to the bathroom. Like, I really was almost about... I think I might have thrown up in my own mouth at that point in time. It was so bad, and the fact that they even
it was like
attempted
a bad
to do
Bollywood kind of scene that didn't work like Bollywood should work.
And just they tried to manufacture this chemistry between the three girls. It just didn't work. You didn't feel like they were connected and they were like a team. You just didn't get it. Please. I'm so disappointed, Marvel. The fact that somebody thought up this idea and thought it was a good idea to put these three characters together in a movie, and whoever thought that original concept up is not smart. But then, I mean, even the original Captain Marvel movie, I liked so much better than this. Because at least it's a backstory of how she got her powers. And we know she was originally from Earth and she lost her memories. We're not really sure what happened. And I thought they did a really good job of switching the original comic book origin of Captain Marvel to...
I liked the 90s music that they injected into that during the 90s period. I thought it was great. Blockbuster.
80s, 90s, yeah.
No, it was like 80s, 90s, but it was more 90s music. I thought that was great. I thought... Wonder Woman 84 missed the opportunity with all that great 80s music to inject more of that.
Good point.
Awful, but I think that's what made it for me for Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel did $1 billion. It
did very well in the box office,
and I think they were trying to pull off of that with the Flurkins.
My son asked me that question this weekend. He's like, "Well, why did that do so well?" I said, "Because came out between Infinity War and Endgame."
Yes,
it's like. Well, if you wonder, the show that's between Friends and Seinfeld is going to do really well on that NBC schedule, right? So it doesn't matter.
That's a great
what that show is that you put sandwiched in between two of the most successful sitcoms ever. So it came out at the end right after Endgame. She was in the end credit scene of Infinity War, and then her movie came out, and we knew she was going to be in Endgame, so we wanted to see who this character is.
Absolutely correct. You're absolutely right.
It had the best lead-in ever.
They pushed that movie as, you need to see this because it ties into the next Marvel Endgame. So
she was in the post-credit scene of Infinity War.
Yeah.
I mean, so like, oh, okay. I mean, it had, again, best lead-in ever. So, but I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah.
I would watch that movie again. As a matter of fact, I've seen it multiple times. I actually don't mind that.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I thought the Kree-Skrull conflict in the comic books has been something that's been going on in Marvel Comics for years. As a matter of fact, we had a comic book run that was about the Skrull invasion of our own planet called Secret Invasion. Oh, yeah, they messed that one up too. But
at least the finale,
they flipped it to us because the Skrulls were always seen as more evil than the Kree. Now the Kree were evil, and they've got their own agenda, but the Skrulls were always being portrayed, at least in the comic books, as worse than the Kree. And they flipped it on us. They made it seem like the Kree were the ones that were actually, killing off Skrulls, which I thought was really brilliant. So, and again, I love the first movie. This movie, Titanium, so bad.
Yeah.
I literally, I'm going to look through my bottom 6 movies of my list of rankings, and I'm gonna say what movie would I not want to watch again before I would watch this. I don't think there is one. There isn't one.
That's a strong statement.
Ant-Man and the Wasp, the original Quantumania. I mean, that's got to be in the bottom 10 of my list now. I would watch, as much as I don't want to, I would watch that movie again before I would watch this movie.
Let's get into 2 final things. One I want to ask you about.
Oh, the post-credit scene we got to talk about too.
Well, the mid-credit scene and then the post-credit scene.
End of the movie and then the mid-credit scene. Because one scene was actually the end of the movie.
Yeah.
They didn't do a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. They did a kind of a end of the movie scene, and then they
jumped out of nowhere, very sloppy. The end of the movie, the way it ended was extremely sloppy, and they tried to, again, I think it's a desperate move because so many people want a Young Avengers movie. I think they teased a Young Avengers.
Well, they did. It's
of course
gratuitous tease.
Yes.
They basically, and again, if Ms. Marvel is the future of Marvel Studios, we are all in trouble.
Yeah.
And again, she better, whoever is directing that character moving forward, if I hear that scream cackle one more time, I'm just gonna walk out. I mean, it's so bad. But the end of the movie, she was so surprised when she found out they had a dossier on her. They knew who she was and she had powers and all this other stuff. And she then hacks into the saber.
She finds one of the
laptops and she finds all of the files on all the younger superheroes out there.
Yeah.
And so the scene that Titanium's referring to, the reason she does this is because Captain Rambeau is trapped in another universe at the end of the movie. She repairs the hole. So Dar-Ben had ripped a hole in space time continuum, which opened a hole between our universe and another universe. And
another reality, yeah.
Another reality. And Captain Rambeau has to close the hole, but she has to do it from that side of the hole for some reason. Yeah. It only works from the other side. So she's lost on the other universe.
Yeah.
And so Ms. Marvel is, Captain Marvel has a job, a mission to do, go save Holland, restart the sun, all this other stuff. So she's like, well, I kind of like being on a team. Maybe I'll put my own team together. And so she finds these files on superpowered
that's her whole thing. She wants
young
to put
people.
A team together. Yeah.
And so we are in New York City. We see Kate Bishop walk through her apartment door, throws pizza at the pizza dog, and says, hey, dinner's on, throws a piece of pizza on the floor for the dog. And Ms. Marvel's sitting in a chair in the dark, and the lights come on. She's like, hey, I've got a list of all these young superheroes out there. And she's like, I'm 23. And she's like, yeah, but you're still young. I think we should put a team together. I'm putting a team together, and I'd like you to be on it.
Did you know Ant-Man had a daughter?
Did you know Ant-Man has a daughter? He said, would you please be on my team? Please be. And then it ends. And so obvious, gratuitous tease to a Young Avengers team. And now we know, for a fact, the first 3 members of this Young Avengers team are female.
Yeah.
At least that's what's been alluded to here.
And one of the worst parts of Ant-Man Quantum
Cassie Lang.
was Cassie Lang. Awful. Just not compelling, not believable. Just dialed in that performance. It was dreadful. Haley Steinfeld, love her. I think
she's
she'd be
fantastic.
Great, and she'd be great on the team. Iman is great. I think she's a superstar. You're right. She does get annoying a little bit, but
overacts.
I think she's so adorable, though. I think it works, but I don't think that is a good team to sell and put asses in seats. I just don't.
Okay, but that's what it was. It was setting up Young Avengers. There's going to be this Young Avengers team.
I've been talking about for a very long time. I really want Young Avengers.
And I bet you if you and I were to put together a Young Avengers team, we'd do a better job than Marvel Studios.
I think my dog Carlos, who is half beagle, could put a better Young Avengers team than they.
Because Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang would not be on that team. Cassie Lang might be on the team, but not Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang.
Agree.
So I wouldn't mind putting Stature, who was on the Young Avengers, on the team. Kate Bishop was on the Young Avengers team. That makes sense. Ms. Marvel was never on the Young Avengers.
No.
I don't know what makes us think that, And the other, we'll say, mid-credit scene, Captain Rambeau, Monica Rambeau, wakes up in a hospital bed. And she wakes up and she looks over and she sees her mom.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh my God, mom!" And she's looking at her. She's like, "Mom, what's going on?" And then we see Beast walk in. We see on the screen the hospital next to the hospital bed. We see the X-Men symbol, and we see Beast, the character, walk in.
He makes reference
voiced by Kelsey Grammer. Yeah. So the Kelsey Grammer version of Beast from the original X-Men run. And he's, saying, "Oh, I think she's here from another universe. She's got this temporal aura. I think she's here from another universe." And the professor wants an update.
Yeah.
And we see Maria Rambeau, the older one, the mother, who's not her mother in this universe, obviously. She's in her binary costume. So Captain Marvel was turned into the character binary in the comic books, in an X-Men comic book, as a matter of fact, many, many years ago, when they wanted to use the Phoenix, but they couldn't for some reason. I think it was a Chris Claremont story. But the binary costume she was wearing, and I thought that was really cool. But now, obviously...
And she's got two bangles.
Yes, she's wearing both bangles on her wrists.
Right.
And that's where I thought you said, I know she was wearing two bangles. And then she, Beast leaves and go to give the professor an update. And she says, "Okay, who are you?" Because, why were you calling me mom and all this other stuff? So obviously this is a parallel or alternate universe. These where the X-Men exist, or at least some form of X. Will we see these people or these characters in Deadpool 3 or some other future movie? Who knows? But that was the big X-Men teaser drop, and Kevin Feige said we're going to see more X-Men and X-Men kind of characters going forward, but this was the first on-screen X-Men in a Marvel movie.
Disappointing. It's disappointing for me. I'm glad they're here. I'm glad they make reference to them, but the way they brought them in sideways like that, which we knew was going to happen in this movie, was desperate, disappointing.
Yeah.
Really, I hope Deadpool does a better job. I really do.
Look, we've gone way too long, Titanium. Look, we've given this movie way more time than it deserved. Look, bottom line, people, if you want to know anything about this movie and you haven't seen it, send us put a question in the comments. Send us an email. We'll be happy to answer it. Do not spend your money and go see this movie. It is not worth it. And as a matter of fact, I think you need to send this message to Marvel that if you keep dropping these crappy products with these crappy characters and crappy stories,
shitty writing,
you're going to pay the price for it. And I'm kind of interested to see the reaction to this. Now, we know what the public reaction has been so far. All the reviews you mentioned, you've watched and listened to a bunch of reviews, and none of them very favorable. The ones that were of any favor were basically, like you said, people who are fanboys or paid actors or whoever it is, right?
Shills that need to be nice and play nice, but Yeah. Hey, listen, Marvel. Go ahead and Venmo me the money for the IMAX movie. Go ahead and Venmo that back to us. We want our money back. Disappointing. So, hey, Professor, I think we've beat this dead horse. Let's ring the bell and end this school.
All right. Well, that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, hit us up via email, supertalkpodcast@outlook.com or @supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
And we're out, sir.
Wow.
Thank you, YouTube. Please be nice in the comments.
Or don't be nice. I
Rip it.
Corner of the man.